The sea was calm that evening, unusually calm, not the kind of silence that felt empty, but the kind that wrapped around you gently, like a soft blanket at the end of a long day. The Thousand Sunny drifted forward at an easy pace, its sails catching just enough wind to glide across the glowing water. The horizon shimmered in hues of amber and rose, where the sun slowly melted into the ocean. At the figurehead, Monkey D. Luffy lay on his back, arms tucked behind his head, watching the sky as if it were telling him a story. "Smells like food," he murmured softly, a small smile tugging at his lips. Behind him, footsteps tapped lightly along the deck. "Food," Sanji leaned forward, one brow lifting as he inhaled the air. "He's right. Something fresh. Spices, maybe roasted fish." Near the helm, Nami held her map steady, her eyes flicking between parchment and horizon. "That's strange," she said quietly. "This island isn't marked clearly. It's almost like it doesn't want to be found." The wind shifted gently, carrying with it something new. Light, faint at first, barely noticeable. But then, one by one, small golden glows began to appear along the distant shoreline. Lanterns, hundreds of them. They flickered softly in the deepening dusk, swaying like fireflies caught in a slow, peaceful dance. From the rail, Usopp leaned forward, eyes wide. "Whoa, do you see that? It's like the whole island is glowing." "Beautiful," came a calm voice behind him. Nico Robin stepped closer, her gaze soft as she watched the lights drift and sway. "There's something ancient about it, like a place meant for rest." Not far away, Roronoa Zoro sat quietly against the mast, eyes closed, seemingly asleep. But as the ship drew closer, one eye opened, just slightly. "Too quiet," he murmured, though his voice held no urgency, only awareness. The Sunny glided toward the island shore, the sound of gentle waves brushing against the hull in a steady rhythm, soft, repetitive, calming. As the anchor dropped with a muted splash, the crew stepped onto the wooden dock, its surface warm from the day's fading sunlight. The air here felt different, still, like time had slowed down, just a little. A few villagers approached, their expressions kind, their movements unhurried. An older man stepped forward, offering a gentle smile. "Welcome, travelers," he said, his voice low and warm. "You've arrived just in time. Tonight, our lanterns rise." Luffy sat up a little straighter, eyes bright. "Lanterns?" he asked, tilting his head. The man nodded, gesturing toward the glowing shoreline. "We light them for peace and for stories. Every light carries a memory, a wish, or a moment worth remembering." Sanji exhaled softly, already charmed. "And the smell?" he asked, glancing toward the village. A woman nearby laughed quietly. "We're preparing for the evening meal. You must be hungry after your journey." At that, Luffy's smile widened instantly. Very. The village itself was small, nestled between gentle hills and the sea. Warm light spilled from doorways and windows, casting golden paths across the ground. Lanterns hung from wooden beams, swaying softly in the breeze, their glow steady and comforting. Children moved quietly through the streets, their laughter soft, never breaking the calm. Some carried small paper lanterns of their own, holding them carefully as if they were something precious. Sanji was already deep in conversation with a group of villagers near a cooking fire, eyes shining as he examined baskets of fresh vegetables and fish. Nami walked slowly through the center of the village, her fingers brushing lightly against a lantern as she passed. "It's peaceful," she whispered. "Almost too peaceful." Robin joined her, her voice gentle. "Places like this, they don't appear often. It's as if the world forgets them and they're allowed to simply exist." Usopp, meanwhile, had found himself surrounded by children. "So then," he began dramatically, "there I was, facing down a sea king 3 times the size of this island." The children gasped softly, their eyes wide with wonder. "And what did you do?" one asked. Usopp grinned. "Well, I scared it away, of course." The laughter that followed was quiet, warm, unhurried. As the sky deepened into night, the first lanterns were released. They rose slowly into the air, carried by the faintest currents, drifting upward like stars returning to the sky. The ocean reflected their glow, turning the water into a sea of shimmering light. Luffy stood at the edge of the shore, watching them rise. "It's nice here," he said softly. Zoro approached, arms folded. "Don't get too comfortable," he replied, though his tone was calm. "Places like this, they usually have something going on beneath the surface." Luffy nodded slightly, though his smile remained. "Yeah, but for now." He looked back at the glowing village, the soft laughter, the drifting lanterns. "It's okay to rest." And somewhere, just beyond the gentle hills, unseen by the village, unheard beneath the soft hum of the sea, a shadow moved. Quiet, patient, watching, the night settled gently over the island, like a soft hush drifting across the sea. Lanterns continued to rise into the sky, their warm glow floating higher and higher, until they became small stars among the real ones. The air carried the faint crackle of firewood, the quiet murmur of voices, and the steady rhythm of waves brushing against the shore. The straw hats found themselves gathered near a long wooden table set just beside a slow-burning cooking fire. Plates of warm food were passed around, fresh fish, soft rice, simple vegetables seasoned with care, nothing extravagant, yet everything comforting. At the center of it all, Monkey D. Luffy ate with quiet enthusiasm, his usual excitement softened by the calm of the evening. "This is really good," he said between bites, his voice slower than usual, as if even he didn't want to disturb the peace. Beside him, Sanji nodded approvingly, speaking in a softer tone than his usual flair. "They're using simple ingredients, but everything's balanced. Clean flavors, thoughtful cooking." Across the table, Nami listened quietly, her gaze drifting between the villagers and the lantern-lit shoreline. There was warmth here, kindness, but beneath it, something quieter, a hesitation, a pause in the way conversations rose and fell. She set her cup down gently. "You've all been very welcoming," she said, her voice calm and kind. "But it feels like something's on your minds." The nearby villagers exchanged soft glances. Not fearful, just uncertain. After a moment, the same older man who had greeted them earlier stepped forward, lowering himself slowly onto the wooden bench. His hands rested together, fingers loosely intertwined. "You're observant," he said with a faint smile. He looked toward the lanterns drifting into the sky. "It's nothing urgent," he continued. "Nothing that needs to disturb a night like this." Robin's voice came gently from beside him. "Sometimes the quietest worries are the ones carried the longest." The man's smile faded just slightly, not into sadness, but into something more thoughtful. "There have been visitors," he said at last. "Not often, not loudly." He paused, as if choosing each word carefully. "They come at night, take what they need, food, supplies, sometimes tools. They don't harm anyone. They don't speak much either." Usopp leaned forward, his earlier confidence softening into concern. "Bandits?" The man nodded once. "Perhaps, though they don't behave like the ones you hear about in stories." "Meaning?" Zoro's voice came from nearby, low and steady. The swordsman sat just outside the circle of firelight, his posture relaxed, though his attention was sharp. "They avoid confrontation," the man said. "If they're seen, they leave. If they're approached, they disappear into the hills." Sanji frowned slightly, folding his arms. "So they're stealing quietly, just enough to keep you uneasy." "Yes," the man replied. "It's not enough to cause panic, but enough that we feel it. Each night, a little more." Nami's gaze lowered slightly. "And you haven't tried to stop them?" A gentle shake of the head. "We have, but this island—" He gestured outward toward the dark hills beyond the lantern glow, "is larger than it seems. There are paths we don't know, places we don't go." A soft breeze passed through, stirring the lantern flames. The crackling fire shifted, sending small embers drifting upward. Robin spoke again, her tone thoughtful. "They take, but they don't harm. They hide, but they don't attack. It suggests hesitation." "Or restraint," Nami added quietly. Luffy had stopped eating, not suddenly, just gradually. His gaze lifted toward the hills in the distance where darkness rested just beyond the edge of the village light. "Are they hungry?" he asked. The question lingered in the air. Simple, direct. The older man exhaled softly. "We believe so." A quiet stillness followed, not tense, not heavy, just thoughtful. Further along the firelight, Usopp now sat with the children again, though his voice had softened. "So, they only come at night?" one of the children asked. Usopp nodded slowly. "Yeah, but that just means they don't want to be seen, and people who don't want to be seen," he paused, thinking, "aren't always the ones you need to be afraid of." The children listened, their eyes reflecting the soft glow of the fire. Near the edge of the gathering, Zoro stood slowly, stretching just slightly. "I'll take a walk," he said. No urgency, no tension, just a quiet decision. Sanji glanced toward him, then toward the hills. "Don't get lost, Marimo." Zoro didn't respond, only gave a faint smirk as he stepped away, disappearing gradually into the dim edge of lantern light. Nami turned back to the villagers, her voice gentle but certain. "You've carried this quietly long enough." She exchanged a glance with Robin, then with Luffy. "No words needed," The decision was already there. Luffy smiled softly. "Don't worry," he said. "We'll help." The man blinked once, surprised, not by the offer, but by how easily it was given. "You've only just arrived." Luffy shrugged lightly. "Yeah," he said, "but you gave us food." A small laugh escaped the man, quiet and warm. "That's reason enough, I suppose." The fire burned lower as the night deepened. Lanterns drifted higher. The village slowly settled, one voice at a time, into a softer quiet, and though the problem remained, it no longer felt heavy. Not with the straw hats there. Not with the sea so calm. Not with the promise, unspoken but certain, that by morning things would feel lighter. Morning arrived slowly, as if the island itself was in no hurry to wake. A pale golden light stretched across the horizon, brushing softly over the ocean surface. The lanterns from the night before had long since faded, but their warmth seemed to linger in the air. Quiet, comforting. The village stirred gently. Wooden doors creaked open. Footsteps moved unhurriedly across the earth. The faint sound of cooking fires being lit drifted between the homes, mixing with the soft rhythm of the sea. Near the shoreline, the Thousand Sunny rested peacefully, its lion figurehead catching the first light of day. Seated on the dock, Monkey D. Luffy swung his legs lazily over the water, watching the gentle waves ripple below. "Feels nice," he murmured. Behind him, Nami approached, arms loosely folded, her gaze already scanning the island beyond the village. "It does," she replied, "which is exactly why we shouldn't let it stay unsettled." Luffy nodded once, simple and certain. "Yeah." A short distance away, Roronoa Zoro stepped out from the path leading back from the hills. His movements were steady, unhurried, though there was a quiet awareness in his posture. "You find anything?" Nami asked. Zoro tilted his head slightly toward the distant tree line. "Tracks," he said. "Light, scattered. They know how to move without being followed." He paused. "But they're not far." The plan, like everything on this island, formed quietly. No loud declarations, no rush, just understanding. As the day unfolded, the crew moved naturally through the village. Sanji joined the cooks again, preparing meals alongside them, though today he made a little more than usual. Nami spoke with the villagers, learning what had been taken, when, and where. Robin walked the edges of the settlement, observing the flow of movement, the patterns of the land. Usopp stayed with the children, though his stories now carried a subtle purpose, teaching them how to notice small things, how to listen carefully. And Luffy simply waited. As evening approached once more, the sky softened into shades of lavender and gold. The villagers prepared their lanterns again, though this time there was a quiet curiosity among them, a sense that something might be different tonight. At the edge of the village, near where the lantern light began to fade into shadow, Zoro stood with his swords resting lightly at his side. Luffy joined him, stretching his arms overhead. "They'll come tonight?" Luffy asked. Zoro nodded. "Yeah." No tension followed, only stillness. Night fell. The lanterns rose again, slow, steady, glowing. The firelight flickered across the ground, casting long, soft shadows, and beyond it all, the hills remained dark, quiet, watching. It began with the faintest sound, a footstep, barely there. Then another. Zoro's gaze shifted slightly. Luffy's smile didn't change, but his eyes opened just a little more. From the darkness, shapes emerged. 3, maybe 4 figures. Their movements were careful, practiced. They stayed low, keeping to the edges where light did not reach. Not aggressive, not hurried, just cautious, hungry. Before they could move further, a voice broke the silence. "Hey," it was Luffy, simple, calm. The figures froze. Slowly, they turned. The lantern light brushed against them just enough to reveal worn clothing, tired faces, eyes that held more exhaustion than malice. Zoro stepped forward slightly, not threatening, just present. "You don't need to sneak around," he said. There was a pause. One of the figures, a young man, no older than the older village children, tightened his grip on a small sack. "We're not here to fight," he said quietly. "We know." Nami's voice came gently from behind as she stepped into the edge of the light. Sanji followed, carrying something in his hands. A tray, warm food. The scent drifted softly through the air. Fresh, inviting, comforting. The bandits hesitated. Confusion flickered across their faces. "What is this?" one asked. "Dinner," Sanji replied simply. "You came for food, didn't you?" Silence. The kind that isn't empty, but full of something shifting. Robin stepped closer, her voice calm as the sea. "You've taken only what you needed," she said, "and never more." The young man lowered his gaze. "We didn't want to cause trouble." "Then don't," Nami said gently. "You don't have to." Another pause. Longer this time. Then slowly, the tension eased. Not all at once, but enough. The food was set down between them. No one rushed forward. Not yet, but the distance between them began to feel smaller. Zoro stepped back, resting his hand lightly on one sword, not out of threat, but habit. Luffy crouched down, resting his chin on his knees. "You can eat," he said. A simple invitation, nothing more. And eventually, they did, slowly, carefully, but they did. The night carried on, quiet as before. Lanterns rose, the fire crackled, and what could have been conflict faded instead into something softer, something resolved not through force, but through understanding. By the time the last lantern drifted into the sky, the shadows at the edge of the village no longer felt like something to fear, only something that had been waiting to be seen. The night returned, softer than before. Whatever quiet worry had once lingered in the air now felt distant, like a memory already fading with the tide. Along the shoreline, a wide circle had formed around a gently crackling fire. Its glow stretched outward across the sand, warm and steady, meeting the silver-blue shimmer of the sea just beyond. Above, the sky opened wide, clear, endless, filled with stars that seemed to rest just a little closer than usual. And one by one, the lanterns began to rise again. Golden lights lifted into the night, drifting upward in slow, unhurried silence, each one carrying something unseen, a wish, a memory, a quiet hope. The villagers gathered close, their voices low, their movements relaxed. Children leaned against their parents, eyes reflecting both firelight and sky. At the center of it all, the straw hats sat among them, not as visitors, but as part of the circle. For a while, no one spoke. There was no need to. The fire cracked softly. The ocean breathed in slow, steady waves, and the lanterns continued their quiet ascent. Eventually, a small voice broke the silence. "Can you tell us a story?" It was one of the children, eyes wide, hands wrapped around a small lantern not yet lit. All around, soft smiles followed. From across the fire, Monkey D. Luffy tilted his head. "A story?" he repeated, as if tasting the idea. He thought for a moment, or at least it seemed like he did. Then he smiled. "Okay." Luffy leaned back slightly, resting his hands in the sand. "We've been sailing for a long time," he began, his voice calm, almost unusually so. "Across a lot of islands, some loud, some quiet, some really weird." A soft ripple of laughter moved through the group. "But the best part," he continued, glancing at his crew, "is just going." He looked back up at the sky, seeing what's out there, meeting people, eating good food. He paused, and finding places like this. The words were simple, but they settled gently into the night, carried easily by the quiet. Next to him, Usopp straightened slightly, clearing his throat. "Well, if we're telling stories," he said with just a hint of his usual flair, "I suppose I should share one of my legendary adventures." A few children leaned forward immediately. Usopp smiled, though tonight even his storytelling carried a softer edge. "There was a time," he began, "when I stood alone on the deck of our ship, surrounded by a storm so massive the waves rose higher than mountains." The firelight flickered across his face as he spoke, his hands moving slowly, gently illustrating the scene. The wind howled, the sky cracked with thunder, and for a moment it felt like the sea itself was testing us. He paused, letting the image settle. "But we didn't run," he said more quietly. "We held our course, together." His voice softened further, and when the storm passed, the sky cleared just like this one. He glanced upward, full of stars. The children were silent now, not in suspense, but in calm wonder. Nearby, Nami leaned slightly forward, her gaze following the lanterns drifting above. "The sky tells you more than you think," she said gently. "The wind, the clouds, the way the stars move." She lifted her hand, tracing a faint line across the horizon. "If you listen carefully, it guides you." A young villager tilted their head. "Even at night?" Nami smiled, "especially at night." The fire shifted softly as another log settled into place. A warm glow spread outward again, wrapping the circle in its quiet light. From the other side, Sanji exhaled contentedly, resting back on his hands. "You know," he said, "some of the best stories don't come from battles or storms." He glanced toward the villagers. "They come from meals, simple ones, shared like this." A few villagers nodded, their smiles gentle. There's something special about sitting together, Sanji continued, his voice low and smooth. Good food, good company, no rush to be anywhere else. He looked toward the fire. That's when you remember things. A quiet hush followed. Then, from just beyond the brightest part of the firelight, Nico Robin spoke. Her voice was soft, steady, like a story already halfway remembered. Long ago, she began, there were people who believed that every flame carried a memory. The lanterns above seemed to glow just a little brighter. They would light small fires like this one and share their stories, not to preserve them, but to let them go. The villagers listened closely now, their expressions calm. Because once a story is shared, Robin continued, it no longer weighs on you. It becomes something lighter, something that drifts. Her gaze lifted slightly, following the lanterns rising into the sky. Like these. For a long while after that, no one spoke again. They didn't need to. The stories lingered in the air, blending with the sound of the waves, the warmth of the fire, the quiet glow of the lanterns. Even Roronoa Zoro, seated just outside the circle, seemed more at ease, his posture relaxed, his breathing slow and steady, as if the night itself had softened around him. A few of the children had begun to drift off, their lanterns resting gently beside them in the sand. The fire burned lower now, its light dimming into a soft, steady glow. Above, the last of the lanterns disappeared into the stars. Luffy yawned quietly, stretching his arms overhead. That was nice, he said. No one disagreed. The ocean continued its endless rhythm. In and out. Soft and steady. The fire gave one last gentle crackle, and the night, calm and full of quiet stories, began to settle into stillness. Dawn arrived like a whisper, not all at once, but slowly, gently, as if the night itself was reluctant to let go. The sky softened first, shifting from deep indigo into pale shades of blue and gold. A thin line of light stretched across the horizon, reflecting quietly on the ocean's surface. The village still slept. Lanterns, now dim and resting, hung from wooden beams and tree branches. Their glow faded but still warm, like echoes of the night before. The fire on the beach had burned down to soft embers, faint threads of smoke curling lazily into the cool morning air. And by the shoreline, the Thousand Sunny waited patiently, ready to sail. Footsteps moved quietly along the sand. One by one, the straw hats gathered. Roronoa Zoro stood near the water's edge, arms folded, his gaze resting on the distant horizon. His posture was relaxed, though his presence carried its usual quiet awareness. A few steps behind him, Nami adjusted a small folded map in her hands, the gift given to her by the villagers the night before. She ran her fingers along its edges, thoughtful. It's not marked like most maps, she said softly. But it feels right. Nearby, Usopp stretched with a long yawn, glancing back toward the village. They're still asleep, he murmured. Kinda feels wrong to leave without saying anything. From beside him, Sanji lit a cigarette, though even that motion was quieter than usual. They said their goodbyes last night, he replied gently. Sometimes, that's enough. Usopp nodded slowly. Yeah. At the front of the group, Monkey D. Luffy stood facing the sea, still, quiet, not restless, not eager, just present. He looked out across the water where the first light of day shimmered softly against the waves. "Let's go soon," he said. His voice carried easily in the calm morning air. But before they could move, a soft sound came from behind them. Footsteps, light, unhurried. The crew turned. From the path leading into the village, a small group of villagers approached. Not many, just enough. The older man from before walked at the front, his expression calm, his eyes warm. Behind him, a few others followed, some carrying small bundles, others simply standing quietly, taking in the moment. "We thought you might leave early," the man said gently. Luffy smiled. "Yeah." The group came to a stop near the edge of the shore. No one rushed forward, no one spoke right away. There was no need. The ocean filled the silence, its waves brushing softly against the sand in a steady, comforting rhythm. After a moment, one of the villagers stepped forward, a younger woman holding a small lantern. It was unlit. "We usually save these for the evening," she said, her voice quiet. "But we thought—" She hesitated slightly, then smiled. "You might want to take one with you." Nami stepped forward, accepting it gently. "Thank you," she said. Another villager approached Sanji, handing him a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "Fresh ingredients," they explained. "It's not much, but—" Sanji gave a soft smile, taking it carefully. "It's perfect." Usopp found himself surrounded once more by the children from the night before. "Are you really leaving?" one asked. Usopp paused, then nodded. "Yeah," he said, "but hey." He crouched down slightly, his voice soft but certain. "Next time you see a storm or hear the wind change, just remember, there's a whole world out there, and you're part of it too." The children smiled, their eyes bright, though their voices stayed quiet. At the edge of it all, Robin stood beside the older man. "You've kept something very special here," she said. The man nodded. "We try." He looked out toward the sea, then back at the crew. "And now, part of your story rests here as well." Robin's gaze softened slightly. "Stories have a way of finding their homes." Zoro shifted slightly, glancing toward Luffy. "Captain," he said quietly. Luffy nodded once. "Yeah." The moment had come, not abrupt, not heavy, just natural. The crew began to move toward the ship, their footsteps slow against the sand. One by one, they stepped aboard the Thousand Sunny, the wood creaking softly beneath them. Luffy was the last to board. He paused at the edge of the deck, looking back one final time. The villagers stood together, their figures outlined by the soft light of dawn. The lanterns behind them swayed gently in the morning breeze. The island, quiet as ever, peaceful, whole. Luffy lifted a hand, a simple wave, nothing more. The villagers returned it, their movements calm, unhurried. The anchor rose, the sails caught the wind, and slowly, gently, the Sunny began to move. The shoreline drifted further away, the figures growing smaller, softer, until they blended into the landscape itself. The lanterns became faint specks of gold. The village, a quiet memory. On deck, the crew settled into the rhythm of the sea once more. Nami stood at the helm, her hands steady, guiding the ship forward. Sanji moved quietly below, preparing something warm with the ingredients he'd been given. Usopp leaned against the railing, watching the horizon with a thoughtful smile. Robin sat with her book, though her eyes drifted occasionally toward the sky. Zoro rested against the mast, already half asleep, and Luffy stood at the front, where he always did. The wind brushed softly against him. The sea stretched endlessly ahead. He smiled. Behind them, far in the distance, the island remained still, peaceful. Its lanterns, now unseen, still holding the stories of the night before. And as the ship sailed onward, the ocean's gentle rhythm returned, waves rising and falling, breathing in and out, carrying with them the quiet warmth of shared stories, of soft firelight, of lanterns drifting into the sky.